example, and I get 1,000 installs from that, you can say that it costs me $1 per install. Numbers are not going to be like that in the real world, but just using that as an example to make the math easier. Now let's say that's some banner ads that I bought. Now there's a video ad where I pay $2,000 and I get 1,000 installs. Well, now that's $2 per install. Well, if you're just looking at the cost per install metric, if you're just looking at the cheapest users possible, you would say that the banner ad users are better because you get $1 per, $2 per, cheaper is better, right? Yep. Not necessarily the case, because the 2,000 per, that was a 30-second video. That's a user who watched your game for 30 seconds, thought that game is interesting, and then they're going to install it. As per my point earlier with the screenshots, that user knows what kind of game they're getting into, knows that they're going to be interested in that game, and they're much more likely to stick with it. They're much more likely to keep playing. So if you calculate the consumer lifetime value of the banner ad user, that might be someone who just tapped a banner ad randomly. That might be just someone who saw a random screenshot, thought interesting enough, and downloaded it, and they didn't really stick with the game. So you might be earning 50 cents consumer lifetime value per user. But the video ad person, ideally, you would earn $2.01 or some amount higher than what your ad campaign costs. And in that case, you look, well, do I lose 50 cents or do I gain 1 cent? That's when you're golden. If you can get to the part where you're gaining money, that's when you can do a big buy. That's what the big companies do. They optimize their metrics. They start small. They get players in the game. They keep tweaking it. They analyze it. And they find the advertisement method that works for them. And they optimize it just enough where they'll earn 1 cent. That means that however much money I put into it, I'm going to get that investment back. And then they can just keep putting money in and in and in and continually gain very small margins. But eventually, they'll get that viral effect, get more and more people. And then that's how big bulk advertisement works. Even if you're not going to end up doing that bulk, you should think about this. You should put analytics in your game. You should analyze where users are coming from, how long they're sticking with it. If I ask you a question, say, well, how many of your users are playing the game today? How many quit within the first 15 minutes? If you don't know those answers, how do you know anything about your game and how well it's doing? Number of downloads doesn't really tell you much.
Well, let me ask you this too. I know we're talking about advertising, but what if the app store that I'm on comes to me and says, hey, we want to do a promotional deal with your app. Can you reduce the cost of it for a week?
Yeah,
is that worth doing?
Absolutely. In most cases, those kinds of deals are absolutely worth doing because you can get that featured placement. You'll get so many eyeballs on your game. You'll more likely earn way more than what you would have gotten having it at full price. Another thing to note too is that if you're seeking out those promotions right now, but you haven't optimized your game for that stickiness, if people play your game for 15 minutes and then uninstall it because it's kind of boring, it doesn't matter how featured you are. It doesn't matter how many downloads you get. It doesn't matter if you get 100 million downloads. If they're all just users going to play for 15 minutes and uninstall, you're not going to make any money. 200,000 users daily active, way better than 10 million downloads in a day.
Yeah.
So that also brings up the stacking marketing. The more that you can do at once, the more marketing efforts that you can do, the higher up the rank you're going to go. If you can get your ads aligned with a store featuring and something else, the more downloads at once, the higher up the ranks you'll get because you'll have that higher velocity, and maximizing that velocity will shoot you up the charts. So if you can get a store placement, try and line up as many ads as you can at that point. Cross-promote with other people's games, post on different forums, do as much as you can at once because a big bump is much better than a small bump.
Great.
Next, I want to talk about beneficial behavior. Who's been in a game or an app or whatever it is, and they start it up, and you get a pop-up that says, hey, would you like to rate us in the store? You've seen that, right, Jason?
Yeah.
Is that annoying to you?
It's extremely annoying.
Oh my God, it annoys me so much. I do not understand it whatsoever.
They're asking me to rate the game before I've even played it, which is really annoying.
Games that people put millions of dollars in doing this same mistake, and it's clearly a mistake. Because let me rephrase how this works. I start your app. The only thing you know about this user is that they want to play your game. And you're giving them the choice, A, ignore it and go play the game, or B, don't play the game. So Say it's my favorite game in the world. I love this game. It is the best game ever. I start the game up. Hey, do you want to not play it right now? No, I want to play this game right now. It's the best game ever. Now let's say I accidentally tap your game, I'm starting my phone, or I'm kind of bored, I'm messing around, and I click it. Hey, do you want to rate it? Well, yeah, I didn't really want to play anyway. I guess I'll go rate it. 3 stars, 2 stars. You're just asking for bad ratings. It's not about that quantity. It's not about just getting people in the store, because you're just going to get that bias of negative ratings. You only want to ask people who are really going to be into your game, who are really going to like it, who really want that 5-star review.
So an example of that, if somebody's playing Zombie Pumpkin Slayer and they go through 50 levels of pumpkin slaying, and I can tell through the metrics that I'm collecting with my game that they really love the game, I'm going to ask them to rate it then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Even better is that as they're getting through, it's not just in between levels, like, hey, you want to keep playing or rate. You do it at a nice pause moment. So for my game, Blast Monkeys, we were a free game, so we had in-app currency to be able to unlock the next level. If you got enough points, you were able to unlock it, or you gave us money, then you could do it. Another option was you could rate us in the store to get a small amount of coin. So somebody plays Blast Monkeys, they don't have fun, wasn't their game, whatever, they quit, they're fine, they leave. Someone who really likes the game, someone who wants the new content right away, and better yet, they didn't want to wait for it or keep playing, they saw the button to go rate us in the store, and suddenly we got 300,000 5-star ratings. Because all the people who loved our game, we then asked at that strategic moment to go rate us. So figure out where that strategic moment is in your game and only ask there to go rate. This also goes with social. You can't just say in between levels, oh, hey, post this to Twitter, and the tweet message is, I'm playing this game. That's just saying, hey, could you please go advertise for free for me? Hey, could you please spam your friends for me? It's just asking for a handout, and people don't like doing that. A much better message is, I'm playing Pumpkin Slayer, Zombie Pumpkin Slayer, and I get a really awesome high score. I see on my charts that I beat you, Jason, so I send you a tweet and say, hey, I just beat Jason in the high score charts. I got this many points. Now you're getting a notification that says, hey, Tobiah just beat you.
Oh, man. I'm going to have to go back in and beat you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's a much better engagement.
Yeah.
You're interested in that message. I'm interested in sending it. It has value. It isn't an advertisement. It isn't value because I got 500 in-game coins for tweeting. It's intrinsic value that I wanted to tell Jason that I beat his high score, and thus I'm better than him, because that's how that works, right?
Yep. And then, my competitive nature, I'm going to have to go back in and beat Tobias' score, because that is the nature of things.
Next, speaking of that negative messages, you want to have an outlet in your game for people to be able to rant at you. You want to have some email box that they can tap, pull up a message, and tell you something, anything. And I can tell you from experience, most of the messages you're going to get there is, this game sucks, or this is buggy, or I hate this. But that's great. And the reason why is that some number of those people who play your game and they don't like it for whatever reason, they're going to go to the App Store and they're going to rate it 1 star. But if you give them that outlet to say, hey, this sucks, they get it out of their system, they're fine, they send that message to you, and then they quit and they don't go and rate it. Even better, you can be tricky about it. You can have it automatically include in that email message what device they're using, what version of the app they're using, maybe some last error messages, you want to be really fancy. Then you can look at that list and go, oh, I see where there's a problem. So say you get a bunch of emails like, hey, this device isn't working. Well, wait, why is that? You can go get that device. Oh, wait, there's some screen aspect ratio problem, fix the bug, push out an update. Even better, if you give an optional return email address field, you can contact them and say, hey, thank you so much for pointing out this problem. I think we fixed it. If you want, you can go try it out, but thank you so much for your help. Now, I guarantee you, if you reply to a message, no matter how hateful it is, 99% of the time, they're going to turn around completely. They're going to say, oh, thank you. I love this. It's awesome. You're cool. They're going to tell all their friends, oh, man, I knew this developer for this game. We talked. We're buddies because I helped them out.
A little bit of customer service goes a long way.
A huge way. Yeah. Having that communication with your audience is a big deal, and you want to make it as direct as possible. And so, again, speaking of communication, let's get to the last point in App Store optimization. Be remarkable, literally. I mean, you want to literally have your game something that people want to talk about. You make it as easy as possible for people. First step for that, make a press kit, make a website. You might be looking at this as like, oh, okay, I'll put a link to the App Store. And yeah, your App Store presence is needed, but you need something for people to talk about. Say I'm a reviewer for a magazine or some website and I want to write about your game. If I don't have anywhere to link to, I'm less likely to want to write about you because it just seems weird to talk about this amorphous game project. Or even worse, say I want to write about you and I want to use a screenshot. I'm not going to open up your app, take a screenshot, and manually upload it to my computer. That's work. If you make it easy for me, if you give me a list of press-worthy screenshots, you give me a write-up, a description about the game and how it works, you give me the website to link to, make it as easy as possible for people to talk about you. Even if your game isn't popular yet. This isn't something you need once you get popular. This is something you need in order to get popular, in order to have people write about it.
Now let's say I do this. I go through the trouble of sending my game for a playtest to a journalist, and they give me a horrible review. Should I just give up? Should I quit?
No, absolutely not. Games you have to iterate on. You have to continually build that up. You have to build a community around that game. Bad feedback is positive, is good. Look at Minecraft as an example. That game started in pre-alpha, completely buggy. You'll look at all of the early access games that are going on right now. Those games are popular not because they're perfect, not because they're amazing, but they're building up a community around it. Let it be okay that there's problems in your game and have that communication. Tell your audience, hey, this is what I'm working on. What should I work on next? This is part of having a website, having a Twitter feed. It isn't just for you to spam out one-way message and not get anything back. Start that two-way dialogue. Even if it's like 10, 100 people, those are not going to be your hardcore fans and grow over time. This is an exponential growth. You can't just start off with hundreds of thousands of fans. You have to start with tens of fans in order to build up slowly and build that story and have that message. And playtesting in public is such a great thing right now. Everyone's doing it. You can Twitch stream your game development live. You can talk with people, and consumers love it. They want to know how the sausage is made. They want to know how games are being made, and they want to hear it. So tell them your story. It's interesting. You're a small independent developer. You have a great story right off the bat, no matter what you're doing or what stage of development you are. You have to be a lightning rod for success. A friend of mine told me that once. It's a really great message because it isn't just about lightning's going to strike me and then I'm going to be successful. I'm going to be really lucky and go up to the top. You have to make yourself ready for that success, ready for those press releases, ready for both success and failure. Too many devs out there don't prepare for failure because, let's be honest, most apps fail. And so they prepare, well, okay, I'm not going to do this full time. I'm not going to, rely on this as my main source of income. But they also don't prepare for success either. They don't set up a website. They don't do a press kit. They don't do any marketing. They just kind of let it sit there because they're thinking, oh, well, it's never going to be popular. Well, if you think that, well, it will never be popular. You have to actually do the work as if it is popular, as if you're ready for it to be big at any moment ahead of time, and then ride that wave once you start getting it. One article could be that spark that starts the fire, that starts you going. But if you don't have any Tinder sent out, it's just going to be one article, one and done.
Okay, so then Zombie Pumpkin Slayer is the best game ever made, ever in the history of video games, and I'm just going to approach it that way.
Well, can't just think like a developer. You can develop the best game in history. And if you don't do anything with it, no one's going to find it. If you're an indie, you have to think like a publisher. You have to actually market your game. You have to actually ship your game. You have to actually iterate in public on what's going on. You have to do what a publisher would traditionally do. We're talking about indies as not having publishers, but that doesn't mean you can skip out the publisher role. So you can't just develop the best thing ever. Because if I have the best game and no one sees it, no one knows about it, what's that going to mean? And that also brings up post-release content. I've talked to so many reviewers that will look at a game, and if it hasn't been updated in the last 3 months, they won't write about it, no matter how awesome it is. And they have told me, literally, well, if they don't care about their game, why should I? If you're not updating your game constantly, it shows that you don't care about it. Just as an example, go look at your favorite apps on the App Store. Go ahead right now, you can do it. You're going to see that they were updated probably in the last 6 months, more likely in the last 3 months, even if they've been out for years. Just continue with little updates, continue with little pushes, just showing that, hey, we still care about this game. We still care about this community. We're still adding new content. You have to think of your apps in this post-release cycle, constantly adding new things. And that brings me to my last big point. Apps are a service. So many people think of apps as a product, and you have to think of apps as a service industry. That means it's something that you continually do. It's something you continually update. A product is something you make and ship. Maybe you make 1.1 and you ship that. This is what you're used to. If you've been working at a regular job, most of the time you're in a product industry. The AAA games industry is a product industry. Apps are a service industry. You have to think about continually updating it. This applies to freemium games, but also to premium games too. You have to constantly add new content. Blast Monkeys, my game, my company, we were updating it every 2 weeks. We had something new in the game. And that was key to our success, to constantly build up that community, build up more games. And it certainly wasn't the first game we made. A great example is Angry Birds. Everyone knows Angry Birds was the 52nd game made by Rovio. That's 51 games of relative obscurity, of barely getting by money, of thinking they're going to have to close down the studio and layoffs. 51 games. 52nd is the most popular game of all time ever. You can't give up early. You can't just release a game, see that it doesn't go anywhere in 3 months and go, well, no one automatically downloaded it and didn't magically become popular, so it must not have been that good. Every game takes iteration. You know how many downloads, you know how high in the rank Angry Birds got in the first 3 months?
Top 100?
No, pretty terrible actually. I think they got about 10,000 downloads, which isn't horrible actually. This is a pretty good amount of downloads. Yeah. If you think about how it was a studio working this game for a year though, they were hemorrhaging money really badly. A lot of people I talked to, if I showed them the numbers of what Angry Birds was at 3 months in, they would have said, well, clearly this game's a flop, cut it loose and try something else. But they didn't do that. They invested more advertising dollars in it. They kept pushing it. They put new content out there. And then it started getting popular. Blast Monkeys, about 3 months in, not very popular at all. I would even admit we've had like 1,000 active users about 3 months in. 4 or 5 months in, we were the #1 Android app. Big differences can happen overnight. And it's not because 3 months in we started doing something differently. It's that exponential growth. Those tens of fans started turning into hundreds of fans, started turning into thousands of fans, and eventually turned into millions of fans. A great example is Antichamber. If you can look at the GDC Vault, there's a really good talk on Antichamber. I think he called it Overnight Success, 7 years in the making. He's working on the game for 7 years before he finally got it out there. And then he made, I think, $5 million in the first week or something crazy like that. Everything is a skill. This is the last point I want to leave you with. Everything you do is a skill. You know development's a skill. You know when you start coding, you're going to have to iterate on it. You're going to have to jump into it. You're doing a lesson like this to start doing something. If I talk to an artist and I say, oh, hey, you're an artist? You learned art? So did you do art by analyzing what's in art galleries? What are the top artists? Who's being talked about? You made an art design document where you wrote up what your art piece is going to be like. You bought this amazing canvas and these super expensive paints in a studio, and you planned out exactly what you're going to draw, and then you finally took the paint and went to the canvas and made a masterpiece and were super successful. Sounds really silly, right? Sounds kind of stupid. No artist is going to think that's the way you do it. Why do app developers think that's how it works? Why do app developers think they can look at the store, figure out what the #1 apps are, say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write an awesome design document. They're going to jump into their engine for the first time, making their first game, spend a year working on it, release it, and expect that it's going to be the best game ever. Truthfully, the second thing you make is going to be better than the first thing. Your first thing's going to suck. The second thing is going to suck compared to the third thing. The fourth thing is going to suck compared to the fifth thing.
So, we're getting ready to release Zombie Pumpkin Slayer to the stores, and we're thinking about doing in-app purchases, but we don't really know what's going to work yet for maximizing purchase conversions. Do we just iterate on that?
Yeah, get it out there.
Do we try some first, and then we start kind of analyzing our analytics and saying, hey, what are people purchasing? What are they not purchasing?
Yeah, that's exactly the way to do it. You could get a focus group of 1,000 people in a room, get a giant stadium, buy pizza, test everyone out, have them write awesome feedback, or you could just put it out there. Let it get 1,000 downloads in the store and monitor those people's what they're doing implicitly. Do it automatically in the background, just as they're playing and using the app. Even if they don't like the experience, you'll collect that data that they didn't like it or that they quit, and that will help you determine, oh, hey, when they get to level 3, everyone quits. Why is that? Well, it's because they died 5 times without getting on. Oh, we need to make it easier, or we need to add more health packs, or we need to figure out some other way to balance it. The sooner you get out, the quicker you can do that iteration.
So if I'm serious about making money, then I need to have analytics embedded in my game.
Absolutely.
So something like Flurry, or that's the major one.
There are a lot of different solutions out there. You can even make your own in Azure fairly easily.
Right.
You can just throw up a PHP page, do a different call to it, throw a different tag. It can be as simple as that. It doesn't really need to be all that fancy. You just need to track the metrics you care about. Hey, when are people dying? When are they starting the next level? How long are they playing before they quit? That kind of stuff. And you just need to start doodling. You just need to start getting your game out there and getting another game out there and start developing over and over and over again. And the more you develop, the better you're going to be as a developer, just with every skill you're going to do. It applies with marketing too. The first time you try marketing a game, not going to be as good as the second time. You just have to keep marketing over and over. You keep experimenting over and over and finding what works. And it's okay to do something that doesn't work. You can just try again and do something else later. Or even take the same thing and iterate on it. And again, these games took years to make, years of iteration, years of being out there before they were successful. Wasn't Flappy Bird on the stores for like 8 or 9 months before it hit #1?
Yeah, it seems right.
Yeah, it was on for a while before it reached the top. So it is absolutely like never too early, I think, to get out there and build that community, build your audience, and just start practicing.
Yeah, talking about preparing for success, Flappy Bird was an overnight hit, and I think it kind of overwhelmed the developer a little bit, and he had to pull the game from the store because he didn't know, he wasn't set up to handle that. So
yeah, it wasn't quite ready for his success necessarily.
Right.
There's also an argument that he pulled back, and then everyone wanted to talk about it. Everyone wanted to talk about the next thing, and then he comes out with this next game, and it hits up in the media everywhere, right? So it was kind of a strategic decision there. It's like, hey, I don't need to deal with this right now. I want to focus on what's important to me. He wasn't just worried about, I'm getting this many downloads now. He was worried about long term. How is he going to set up his indie development in the future? And that applies to all developers. It's not just about that short term, how do I get downloads right now? How do I get known right now? The first things first is make your game great. Once you have a great game, once you have a perfect game, then you can start pushing it. Then you can start marketing it. You don't need 1 million users right now when you're starting out. You need a few users who are going to give you really good feedback, who are going to iterate on it, who are going to polish it. If you have a game that monetizes really, really well with only 1,000 players, it's easy to scale that up to 1 million players because you're monetizing well. It's doing that math, like I said earlier, where you can start ramping up the advertisement. But if you're not monetizing well, 1 million, 10 million, 1,000, it doesn't make a difference. Well, I hope that was you learned something about marketing and monetization. If you have any questions about that, I love getting questions. You can tweet me at Tobiah Marks or go to my blog, tobiahmarks.com, where I have a bunch of articles and information. Jason as well. You're Jason G. Fox on Twitter.
At Jason G. Fox.
So, ask us questions. It was a really hard topic to kind of condense in 50 minutes. There's so many different aspects to touch on. I know I went kind of fast, but hopefully you guys learned something and found it interesting. We're going to take a 15-minute break and stick tuned for module number 9. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Hope you had a good, quick break after that last session. I know, again, I keep mentioning every session, I'm very, very excited to be here.
Yep.
And I'm back again today for the first time today with my good friend Dave Oyles again for our next session in developing 2D and 3D games with Unity on Windows, Prime-31, and Azure Mobile Services. How to do cool things like leaderboards by using the cloud in your application.
Okay, absolutely. Like Adam said, we're going to get started with one of my favorite topics, and that is Azure Mobile Services. And like you said, how to get tied in with your Unity game in particular. So I spent some time kind of creating, working with Prime-31 and creating, best to say, a sample to kind of work with your developers so you can better understand how to get this working within your application itself.
Prime-31 providing, of course, a year of free plugins for Unity for the Microsoft platform.
Yep.
Be it their Essentials plugin, do things like live tiles, which we'll actually look at the next session, Azure Cloud Integration, in-app purchases, things like that. So free for 1 year from prime31.com.
Absolutely. So quick module overview. We're going to be doing things like an intro to the Azure plugin, creating your first mobile service in Azure, understanding how Unity handles DLLs. It's a very eccentric and sometimes complicated method, so we'll work with you to get that done.
Eccentric, indeed.
We'll understand how to install the plugin, compile our actual project, as well as walk you through bits of the code. It can seem a bit difficult at times, but once you break it down into small, digestible bits, you'll have a much, much better understanding of how it works, along with the functions available to us. If you're familiar with LINQ or search queries, you'll be familiar with this as well. And finally, we'll wrap things up with what other options exist for developers out there. So without further ado, let's get started with an intro to the Prime-31 plugin. So like Adam mentioned before, it is Prime-31 has a partnership with Microsoft to allow many of his plugins to be free for us for over the next year. So I highly suggest to head over to prime31.com and check them out.
They're normally like $70, $80 plugins.
Right now, this plugin runs across the Windows 8 store. The phone should follow shortly. We're working with Unity right now to get that built in too. It will run inside the Unity editor, but you will not be able to actually connect to Azure itself. Again, go to prime31.com/plugins to find it. I'll take you there real quick to give you a right understanding of what the navigating it actually looks like. Prime31. We'll take a look at this. So the plugins page. You can't download the plugins directly through the app, through the site itself. What happens is I go to Windows Store right here. You see all the available plugins. See download now, download, buy on the right-hand side. And what happens if I go to click on these, for example, the Microsoft Azure plugin, click download, I'll have to first register. So it's my name, first and last, and my email address. And then after I actually register, I'll receive a link in my email to download any of these plugins. I've already gone ahead and done that. So let's take a step back into the PowerPoints and understand how to get this integrated with our project. So it's also a great time to take a step back and understand we need to download the Azure Mobile Services SDK before we continue with this. So this allows our Visual Studio project to then talk to the Azure Mobile Services backend. It's a NuGet package. So if you take a look at these slides immediately following this talk, or if you do a quick Bing search for Azure Mobile Services SDK, you can download it there, as well as from Visual Studio. I've gone ahead and done that already, so I'll save us the time there. So now, creating an Azure mobile service. So first of all, you're probably wondering, what is a mobile service for Azure? Well, first thing we can do is head to our Azure portal. And what that'll do is allow us to take a view of what's going on here. So go to Azure portal. So it's manage.windowsazure.com. When I click on that, it'll actually bring me to my portal, which you can already see here in just a moment.
I love that little progress bar.
Yeah, and we have actually a very nice preview that the Azure team is working on right now too. I don't want to get too complicated, so I decided to just stick with the simple one we have at this moment, but in the very near future, you're going to see what else they're working on. So on the left-hand side here are all the services that are available to me as a Microsoft developer. So most commonly, I'm checking out websites, but in this sample, I'm going to keep it simple. Go back to mobile services on the left-hand side. They even have a little mobile device, so you have a better understanding. And if I'm going to create a new service, I would go